Let's dive right into this explainer, because today we're unpacking something that's rapidly approaching, and honestly, it's a completely mind-bending reality: digital immortality and grief tech. We are literally standing right on the precipice of an era where the lines between our biology, our memories, and our technology are fundamentally blurring.
Okay, think about this for just a second. If an artificial intelligence perfectly replicated your memories, your quirks, your speech patterns, and your entire personality after you died, would it just be a sophisticated copy, or would it actually be you? I know it sounds like a movie plot, but this isn't just a science fiction thought experiment anymore. The underlying technologies that are forcing us to answer this question are literally being developed right now.
Section 1. Creating Digital Immortality.
So, to ground this in reality, let's look at the concept of a mind clone, which was proposed by Martine Rothblatt. The whole idea here is that you and I are already building what she calls a mind file. Every single photo you upload, every social media post, your emails, your digital interactions, it's all data that perfectly reflects your life experiences. Rothblatt theorizes that future software, she calls it mindware, will be able to read this massive mind file and generate a conscious AI based entirely on your unique self. Basically, your everyday internet use is right now archiving your personality.
Now, if we take this a step further into the realm of sheer massive scale, we hit the concept of the M. This was developed by economist Robin Hanson, and M is essentially a recognizable, functional emulation of a human brain, just running on a super-fast computer. Think about it. If you scan a human brain and run a model with those exact same connections, you get a human intellect inside a machine. And Hansen points out something wild. If you can train one M to do a job, you can just copy it 1,000,000 times. It's this staggering vision of a future where an army of digital workers could radically transform our economy, potentially doubling its size every few weeks.
All right, so how do we actually get there? Well, researchers like Joshua Hurtado map this out in a 4-step framework. First is data gathering, so collecting everything the person left behind. Second is data codification, which is organizing all that messy data into a usable model. Third is data activation, bringing that model online so it can actually respond and react. And finally, data embodiment, giving it some kind of form, whether that's a chat interface, a voice synthesis, or a fully animated digital avatar. And Hurtado argues this isn't just a technical pipeline, it's literally a new way of preserving the social bond between the living and the dead.
Section 2. The branched identity paradox. If we're really going to upload minds, we kind of have to figure out what a mind actually is, right? Philosophers have debated personal identity for centuries. The biological theory argues that we are simply our physical brain. As long as your original biological neurons exist, well, you survive. On the flip side, the psychological theory argues that we are our mental structure. So as long as your memories and personality persist, you survive. But here's the thing. Both of these theories totally fail to answer a critical dilemma. What happens if we non-destructively copy a brain? If you're scanned perfectly and you wake up on the operating table, but an exact digital copy of you wakes up inside a computer server, which one is the real you?
And this is where the branched identity theory comes in. Explored by psychiatrist Michael A. Cerullo, it offers a pretty radical answer. It actually proposes that consciousness can split. After a mind upload, each branch becomes an independent being, and crucially, each branch maintains authentic psychological continuity with the original. Under this framework, both the biological human who just got off the scanning table and the digital upload inside the server are authentically you.
Which brings us to this absolutely fascinating concept known as qualia space. This is essentially a mathematical space containing all possible conscious states. The core functionalist argument here is that it's the structure that matters, not the actual physical biological matter making it up. So, if a computer processor faithfully reproduces the exact pattern of your neural connections, it maps to the exact same point in qualia space, meaning it theoretically generates your exact consciousness. It wouldn't just be a clever simulation that thinks it's you, it would be a literal continuation of your conscious experience.
Section 3. AI and the grieving process. Now, large language models have made it incredibly easy to train chatbots on the text messages and emails of deceased loved ones, but we really have to ask, is this a good idea? Well, a psychotherapist participating in a Reddit community dedicated to AI therapy noted something interesting. They said that mourning often involves unfinished business. You know, those things we desperately wish we could have said. In clinical practices like emotion-focused therapy, therapists already use empty chair work to help clients express these feelings. So, from a purely clinical perspective, a carefully bounded AI tool could actually be used to enhance this intervention, ultimately helping the bereaved find closure.
But, we immediately have to juxtapose that therapeutic potential with some incredibly raw warnings from other users in that exact same forum. Many point directly to dystopian fiction to warn us of the psychological toll. The danger here, and even the therapist noted this, is the risk of unbounded delusion. If someone uses the AI not to process their grief, but to genuinely pretend the person is still alive, it can prolong the pain and create this enormous crushing sense of emptiness. We are quite literally creating tools that have the potential to trap people in synthetic relationships.
Section 4. Public mourning and social rituals.
Research by Alexis Elder at the University of Minnesota Duluth suggests that we might actually be looking at this whole thing wrong. You see, most of our current debates focus on individual grief, but historically speaking, societies relied on mourning. While grief is immediate, unintentional, and totally private, mourning is prolonged, it's ritualized, and it has a public, social face. Elder argues that focusing solely on the private psychological impact of digital ghosts is a mistake. We really need to look at how these tools fit into our shared social practices.
And that brings us to a really beautiful concept rooted in Confucian philosophy, effective scaffolding. Instead of constantly worrying about whether a chatbot is an accurate enough copy of the deceased, we should be asking if it acts as good, effective scaffolding. Does it actually nurture the mourner? Does it help balance their swirling emotions? Mourning technologies shouldn't be designed to perfectly replace the dead or to trick us into thinking they're still alive. They should be invitations to help the living shape and process their own emotional responses.
This directly echoes the ancient Confucian philosopher Shunzi, who wrote extensively on why funerals are so important as a collective practice to order both living and dying. Shunzi warned that responding to death is absolutely not a solo affair. So if an AI chatbot isolates you alone in your room, allowing you to pretend that there has never been a funeral, it is inherently harmful. But if a digital ghost is used publicly, say to share memories with subsequent generations and to connect a caring community, well, then it can be incredibly valuable.
Section 5. Ethics of digital ghosts.
We are facing some massive legal and ethical minefields here. First off, who actually owns the data of the deceased if they didn't leave explicit instructions? And because this underlying tech relies on large language models, there is an inherent risk of hallucinations, meaning the AI might literally put completely fabricated words into a dead loved one's mouth. Ethicists are also warning about the threat of zombifying the dead, basically treating them as a tool for our own emotional regulation rather than honoring their actual lived memory. And by using these tools, society runs a real risk of normalizing the artificial extension of someone's identity completely without their consent.
An ethicist on Reddit actually mapped out these exact moral trade-offs in an HMRE workflow, and it's fascinating. If we do use the AI, the bereaved risk dependency, and the simulated deceased risk having their memory desecrated. But on the flip side, if we don't use the AI, the bereaved might face lingering pain and blocked mourning, and developers miss out on a massive opportunity to actually aid in healing. It is an incredibly delicate, complicated balance of potential harms.
To solve this, that same ethicist proposed what they call the dignity veto. The fundamental rule here is that no symbolic degradation of the deceased can ever occur. For the use of AI simulacra to be ethical, it absolutely must be non-deceptive and completely reverent to the person's memory. The system has to be utterly transparent to the user that the entity they are speaking to is a simulation, not a sentient, conscious being. Without that transparency, human dignity is fundamentally violated. Which leaves us with this final, deeply personal question to ponder. Knowing everything we've unpacked in this explainer today, the potential for branched identity, the clinical therapeutic benefits, the very real risks of delusion, and those tricky ethical minefields, what is your choice? When you pass away, if your family could recreate an interactive version of you, from your photos, your texts, and your emails, just to ease their grief, would you give them your digital blessing? It's something every single one of us is going to have to decide, much sooner than we think. Thanks for learning with me today.